No, I'm not making this up. Millions of you who had the right to vote on that day will now be unable to. I'm absolutely furious. This denial of our democracy is fundamentally un-British, undemocratic, and exposes just how rotten the entire system has become. There's no doubt in my mind Britain is broken. The government has just banned elections for the first time in history. Nearly 10 million people will be stripped of their right to vote on May 1. Why? Because those in power are terrified. Reform UK is rising faster than they ever imagined. Instead of facing the public, Labour and the Conservatives have decided to shut the whole thing down. Nigel Farage is furious, and rightfully so. This isn't just an attack on Reform UK, it's an attack on democracy itself. For centuries, ever since Magna Carta, Britain has been admired around the world for its freedoms, liberties, and democratic rights. We invented the very concept of parliamentary democracy. And now, on May 1, nearly all of the English county council elections, your opportunity to vote on crucial local issues, have been cancelled. For months, the establishment ignored Reform UK, dismissing it as a minor protest party. But the numbers tell a different story. Reform is gaining thousands of new members every single day, making strides in areas once dominated by Labour and the Tories. It's no longer just a political party, it's a movement. A real, unstoppable force that the elites can't control. Now, instead of winning through debate, they're silencing voters. That's not democracy. That's fear. The media won't cover this. The politicians won't admit it. But we all know what's happening. The establishment is losing its grip and they're panicking. Nigel Farage is about to address the nation, and he's not holding back. He's calling this what it truly is, a blatant act of political suppression. He's demanding answers and making one thing crystal clear: he's not backing down. If they think they can kill this movement by banning elections, they're in for a shock. The numbers don't lie. Reform UK is exploding, with over 150,000 members and growing by 6,000 every single day. That's not a fluke, it's a political earthquake. People are sick of being ignored, tired of broken promises, weak leadership, and the same old parties running Britain into the ground. They want real change, and that terrifies the establishment. Who's responsible for our roads, potholes, adult care, and support for children with learning difficulties? These things matter. I couldn't believe it when I first heard the rumor that the Labour government, despite having no manifesto commitment, wanted to completely reshape local government. And now the Conservative Party, which controls most county councils, is using that as an excuse to cancel the elections. So what did they do? They banned the elections on May 1. Nearly 10 million people were supposed to vote. Instead, the government pulled the plug. No ballots. No democracy. No choice. Why? Because they know what's coming. Reform UK isn't just gaining support, it's winning over people in places they never expected. If the elections went ahead, Reform could shake up councils, gain influence, and prove once and for all that Britain wants change. Labour and the Conservatives can't afford that. They've been clinging to power for decades, swapping seats like a game of musical chairs. But now, Reform is breaking the cycle. This isn't just an election delay, it's an act of political survival. The establishment knows they're in trouble. And instead of facing the voters, they're running scared. But here's the thing: Reform isn't going anywhere. Neither are the millions of people who want their voices heard. The political elite are in full-blown panic mode. Labour and the Conservatives, two sides of the same broken system, have spent years believing they could ignore the people and get away with it. Now, Reform UK is proving them wrong. Nigel Farage has spent decades warning about this moment, a time when the British people would finally wake up to the lies. Corruption and sheer incompetence have taken hold of those running the country. That moment is here, and the establishment is terrified. Over half of the county councils in Britain have stated that, because of these changes, they want the elections cancelled on May 1. It looks like about 10 million of you, who would have had the right to vote that day, will not be able to. This is absolutely monstrous. Reform UK's rise isn't just a problem for them, it's a direct threat to their control. For years, they've played the same game, trading power back and forth, making empty promises, and shutting out any real alternatives. But Reform isn't playing by their rules. It's attracting voters from all sides: former Conservatives who feel betrayed, Labour voters fed up with weak leadership, and everyday Brits who just want their country back. That's why they banned the elections. They saw the numbers and knew Reform was gaining ground. Instead of competing fairly, they chose to block democracy itself. But the people aren't stupid. The backlash has been immediate. Journalists, political commentators, and ordinary citizens are calling this what it is: an attempt to silence voters. Social media is flooded with outrage, and local communities are furious. Even those who don't support Reform can see the danger in shutting down elections just to protect those in power. This isn't just a political fight anymore. It's bigger than Nigel Farage, bigger than Reform UK. This is about whether Britain is still a democracy or just a country where elections happen only when the establishment feels safe. If they thought banning the elections would stop this movement, they've badly underestimated the British people. We haven't heard much debate about this, because both Labour and the Conservatives agree they are terrified of Reform's rise. They know how well we're going to do on May 1, which is why they've cancelled the elections in many of our strongest areas. Well, I promise you, we will fight those that are still up. We will do well, but I'm pretty angry. This denial of our democracy is fundamentally un-British, undemocratic, and shows how rotten the whole system is. There's no doubt in my mind Britain is broken. The people in charge can't even run their own offices properly. Scandal after scandal, failure after failure. It's no wonder the government is falling apart. The Prime Minister, a former lawyer, should know the law better than anyone, but somehow he keeps making legal blunders. While the country struggles with rising costs, he's been caught up in personal financial controversies, even failing to pay for his own clothes. How can a multi-millionaire leader be so out of touch with reality? Then there's the Chancellor, one of the most powerful people in government, accused of lying on her CV. If the person in charge of the nation's finances can't even be honest about her own past, why should anyone trust her with the economy? It gets worse. The anti-corruption minister, the person supposed to clean up dirty politics, had to resign over corruption allegations. You couldn't make this up. The Attorney General has taken the government to court so many times, it's as if he's working against his own party. The Foreign Secretary has been giving away land and forcing taxpayers to foot the bill. The Transport Secretary pleaded guilty to lying to the police. Just think about this: something truly extraordinary is happening. Something remarkable. Something historic. Everyone thought it was literally impossible. A new political party that started just 7 months ago with no representation in Parliament whatsoever, that made its first big step on July 4th last year, earning 4.1 million votes and 5 seats. Everyone said, that's it, they can't possibly go any further. And here we are this week, with 7 opinion polls showing that we're now consistently 3 points ahead of the Conservative Party and just a point or 2 behind Labour. And it doesn't stop there. The safeguarding minister, instead of helping victims, made it all about herself. The Energy Secretary. Supposedly pro-environment policies are covering the countryside in concrete and solar panels. The Home Secretary refuses to defend the borders from illegal immigration, and the Justice Secretary is freeing criminals early, putting thousands of offenders back on the streets. This is the state of leadership in Britain today, a government so riddled with incompetence and dishonesty that they'd rather shut down elections than face the public. How much longer can this go on before the country demands real accountability? Individuals are losing confidence in the framework. At the point when debasement turns into the standard and people with significant influence twist the principles to safeguard themselves, trust disintegrates. From pastors trapped in embarrassments to a state leader overlooking the law, the public authority appears to be more centered around covering its tracks than serving individuals. It was the straw that broke the camel's back to boycott races. It's not only a frantic move, it's an immediate assault on majority rule government. In the event that legislators can drop votes when it suits them, what straightaway? England is at a limit. Either the public retaliates, or the nation slips further into a framework where power precedes individuals. We are living in a K-star tyranny. Bits of gossip were twirling that work plan to drop the nearby races in Britain. For what reason would they confirm or deny that they are going for it? I would agree, even before the white paper has been delivered, for what reason would they confirm or deny that they are going for it? Right now, the supposition that is races are going for it. In any case, it's typical in a course of revamping that when a committee asks for rearrangement, assuming that races are occurring for a chamber that basically won't exist inside the term of those decisions, you hold off the races and choose for a shadow body. This shadow body is essentially a type of the new chambers that will follow. Nigel Farage is irate, and as it should be. He went through years battling for a vote-based system, just to watch the public authority shut it down the second they felt undermined. The choice to drop decisions isn't simply surprising, it's disreputable. A huge number of citizens have been quieted, and Farage is making it clear he won't represent it. He's called this move a ridiculous attack on majority-rule government, and he's not withdrawing. Unlike the career politicians running Westminster, he's not afraid to challenge the establishment head-on. While Labour and the Conservatives scramble to protect their sinking ships, Farage is rallying his supporters, making one thing clear: reform isn't going anywhere. He's demanding answers, calling out the cowardice of those in power, and most importantly, promising to fight. This isn't just about one election, it's about the right of the British people to have their voices heard. Farage has always been a fighter, but this time it's bigger than him. He's standing up for millions who feel abandoned by the system. The establishment thinks they can crush Reform UK by shutting down elections. They've underestimated Nigel Farage and the people standing behind him. You can see why they don't want an election, why their party has lost faith, why half of his cabinet are lining up to replace him. No answers, no plan, no clue. The Prime Minister has never, ever had the courage to stand up to his party. So let me help him out and say to them what he wishes he could: the mortgage mayhem, the waiting lists, the criminals walking free. They are the cost of Tory chaos. If they can't stop the endless games and gimmicks, if they can't stop putting themselves before the country, they should pack up, go home, and waste somebody else's time. It wasn't that difficult, was it, Prime Minister? This is the moment. If they can cancel elections today, what will they do tomorrow? Britain belongs to its people, not to a corrupt elite clinging to power. Nigel Farage and Reform UK are standing up, but they can't do it alone. It's time to take action: speak out, get involved, and make sure your voice is heard. Share the truth, challenge the lies, and show the establishment that the people won't be silenced. Democracy only works if the people defend it. Right now, Britain needs fighters. The question is, will you stand up or let them win?